Good afternoon. I want to thank everyone for coming to this very important meeting of the City Council as we do the people's work. Council members, at this time, would you please stand for the invocation, which will be given by Reverend Peter Grana from Redeemer Lutheran Church. Then please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Reverend, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. We begin in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Gracious God, our Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for giving us all that you give us. And we ask you to bring your Spirit here into this place right now as these men and women make and administer those laws and ordinances that affect our common good. Instill in them wisdom and courage to do the right things that bring glory to your name and pleasure to your heart. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Reverend Grana. Council members, would you please indicate your presence electronically?
7 members of City Council are present.
Okay, members of the City Council, you have before your consideration the minutes of a call meeting of June 8th, 2015, a call meeting of June 9th, 2015, and a regular meeting of June 9th, 2015. Are there any corrections to the minutes?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. You'll be voting electronically.
Okay, very good.
The minutes are adopted 7-0.
Okay, Madam Clerk.
Yes, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, City Council rules require a limit of up to 5 minutes to speak. As you approach the speaker's podium, you will notice a timer. At the beginning of your 5 minutes, you will see a green light. 4 minutes into your remarks, you will notice a yellow light. At the end of 5 minutes, you will see a red light, hear a beep, and we ask that you conclude your comments at that time. While speakers have an opportunity to address council on matters of public concern, all comments should be made in a manner that respects the seriousness of the forum and should not be made in a belligerent, sarcastic, or demeaning fashion. A speaker who fails to observe this basic rule of decorum will be deemed out of order and not allowed to conclude his or her comments. Public hearing, 15-2.
Madam Clerk, let me interrupt. Before we get into the program, from a procedure matter, I need to read a statement for the public so you'll understand where we are in our process. As you all know, the City Council has been recruiting for a city manager, and we are now preparing for the interviews. Pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711B, during this open session of council, we would like to announce that closed meetings will be held at an undisclosed location within 15 days hereafter for the purpose of interviewing candidates for the position of Portsmouth Chief Administrative Officer. Thank you very much, and Madam Clerk, you can continue.
Yes, sir. 15-244, downtown, adoption of a resolution revoking the use permit, UP 0817, to Charles Greenhood for an entertainment establishment at 467 Court Street, Portsmouth, Virginia, in accordance with Section 40.1-2.3B8 of the City of Portsmouth zoning ordinance. The reason for considering revoking of the use permit is due to the failure of the establishment to comply with one or more conditions of approval. The entertainment establishment at 467 Court Street is known as or associated with Brudy's Restaurant, also known as the Mansion, Moroccan Ballroom, Metropolis Ballroom, and the Penthouse. The property is known by Shasket LLC, Vision Principle, Quality of Life, electronic roll call, and I have registered speakers.
Good evening, sir.
Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, This is a request to revoke an entertainment use permit that was approved by City Council back on October 28th, 2008. The entertainment permit was approved for Charles Greenhood and applies to Baruti's Restaurant, the Mansion, the Complex, and other names that may have been used at 467 Court Street. I just have a few slides just to kind of orient you. The building that's the subject of this request is on your left. The zoning map is on your right. This property is currently zoned D1, and it's in the T5 subdistrict. In February of this year, the planning staff was approached by the police department and neighborhood advancement and they made us aware of some repeated problems with Baruti's Restaurant and the establishments on the upper floors. And so we investigated the conditions that were approved. There were 14 conditions that were approved back in 2008 that were attached to the approval of that, and determined that in fact there were violations of those conditions, particularly four that I'll go into a little more detail in a minute. And so we sent a notice to Mr. Greenhood advising him that those were violations, gave him an opportunity to appeal those, a 30-day appeal, and received no inquiries or requests for appeal. And so in our opinion, the violations are now indisputable. Part of the property includes a second and third floor. This was a floor plan that was presented back in 2008. The total occupancy and standing room exceeded throughout the whole building over 1,000 people. And so it's a fairly large and active establishment. Again, there were four conditions that staff has determined to have been violated, and I'd like to just go through those. The first was a condition that all food and drinks be provided by the restaurant owner. We've determined, based on the police investigations and have documentation, that beer was brought in to the establishment that was not through the normal channels approved by ABC. And this has actually led ABC to conduct a hearing and determine that the ABC licenses should be revoked. Mr. Greenhood has appealed that, and that appeal will be heard August 4th. The second violation is providing interior and exterior security. That is no longer possible with the qualifications because both the Sheriff's Department and the Police Department have instructed their staff to not do off-duty service at this location. So there is no way to have that kind of security on the premises. The third item was a condition that required that all taxes be paid and current when due. And you have a letter from the city treasurer in your packet that indicates that there is in excess of $55,000 in back taxes dating back to the 2011-2012 time frame. That includes both real estate and personal property taxes. In addition to that, there's a whole raft of other taxes that, as we understand, are outstanding. Those records, however, are protected by the Code of Virginia and are not accessible by the public or the staff. So we don't know the full extent of those additional taxes. The fourth one is not to violate peace and good order by either the operator or the patrons. And you have two letters that were sent to Mr. Greenhood by the Chief of Police that document the events that have occurred over the last 12 months, in excess of 30 police calls, some of them requiring many officers, as many as 19, 20 officers on the premises. There have been a number of other incidences, including guns being fired, drug possession, intoxication, et cetera, and those are all outlined in the two letters that Chief Hargis prepared. In light of all these violations of the conditions, staff is recommending that the use permit be revoked. There are a couple of other factors that I just want to mention for your consideration. Use permits go with the property, not with the property owner. So at this point, given the status of this property, the use permit could be transferred to a future owner unless it is revoked. The second thing that I just wanted to mention, I placed at each of your seats a list of emails that I've received in the last 2 days in a written letter. There are 8 emails, 1 handwritten letter, and I also received a phone call, all in support of revoking the use permit. And finally, Chief Hargis, and in particular Detective Shelkey, who has led the investigations for the police department, as well as Mr. Brusso, with the Director of Neighborhood Advancement is here should you have any questions about any of the charges or complaints related to this case. With that, I'll conclude my comments and try to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Moody.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. The ABC permit, understand there is a hearing in August, but doesn't, if council votes to pull the use permit, doesn't that in effect also withdraw the ABC permit at that time?
My understanding is no. They are separate permits and approvals. There's no relationship between the use permit and the ABC license specifically.
So you can have a ABC license without a use permit?
Under the zoning ordinance of today, yes. There was a time when restaurants required special use permits. That is not the case at this point. And I'm not sure when that changed. I can say it changed in 2010, but it might have been changed earlier than that.
Do we have Agent Simmons with ABC in the audience? Could speak to that?
Not sure.
Oh, yes, he is.
Okay. I'd like to hear from him to elaborate on that.
Thank you.
Good evening, sir. And if you're not prepared, you can just state so, and we'll allow you to take your seat, but...
Depends on your question,
Okay.
ma'am.
Sure. All right.
Well, the question goes back to the use permit. Is not a requirement to have a use permit?
I can testify as far as Norfolk goes. If Norfolk revokes a use permit, if the licensee uses it, then the city will charge them with violating city ordinance, because the use permits allows them to sell alcohol, even though they may have an ABC license from us. The license isn't any good if you revoke the use permit.
Well, that was my point.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, sir.
Sir, excuse me, if you could state your name.
Robert L. Simmons, Jr.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, please.
Our first speaker is Mr. Irv Lindley.
Good evening, Colonel.
Good evening, Mayor Wright, Vice Mayor Simmons, City Council representatives, Acting City Manager Brandon Godfrey, and city staff. I am a resident of 218 Glasgow Street in Portsmouth, Virginia, and I am here tonight representing the Old Town Civic League as president. I see that you have been briefed on the situation with the use permit, so I don't need to go into that. But what I'd like to do is give all of you a little bit better picture of how we were affected as a community. And what we try to do is we tried to narrow down the number of speakers that was going to touch this, and so we each took a little slice of the pie. Okay. So bear with me, I'm going to lead off here. So this includes Civic League members, it includes homeowners, and it includes clergy that are located in the Old Town area. We want to share the experiences of how the mansion/complex establishment has threatened three things, very important things: public safety, quality of life, and property values. I am the third Old Town Civic League president to deal with the complaints from the Old Town residents since the original use permit was approved in 2008 for the mansion/complex. In fact, a day or two after I took office as president in 2014, I received a subpoena to appear at the ABC hearing involving the mansion complex for failure to comply with one or more conditions of the approval of the ABC license. From the community perspective, I would like to give you a few examples that I received from residents that live in the vicinity of the Middle Street garage. This was the time when the mansion complex was using that garage for their valet parking, as well as other parking in there. These incidents occurred after patrons left the mansion/complex and were no longer under the ABC jurisdiction. I have three items. The first incident was individuals heading for the Middle Street parking garage, engaging in yelling, screaming, obscenities, and vocally shouting threats to each other while en route. Sometimes they stop, stand on the corner, inebriated, and just yell and scream, clearly disturbing the peace and tranquility of the neighborhood. The second instance was individuals leaving the mansion/complex to head into the Middle Street parking garage and start using their key fobs to honk their horns and find their car, and continue to just purposely honk the horns for hours on end, all late at night and into the early morning hours, clearly disturbing the peace, tranquility of the neighborhood. Third was individuals leaving the mansion/complex to get their cars, exiting the Middle Street parking garage, inebriating, turn right and proceed down Middle Street onto London and make no attempt to stop at the stop sign. Many near misses have occurred. The situation has been so bad that in the past that Chief Hargis has put out cones so no one leaving can even turn right onto Middle Street. It's a very serious accident about to happen. So in conclusion, I would like to quote to you the Old Town Civic League mission statement. The mission of the Old Town Civic League is to promote the interest, safety, community spirit, and well-being of the Old Town Historic District of Portsmouth. There's three things about this. Number one, we are all about making Portsmouth, Virginia a better place to live, and we have earned our stripes. Secondly, we'd also like to make it clear, and I hope this is accurate, that the revocation of this use permit will not stand in the way of council considering and approving a future application that fits the location, and after having considered the historical residential neighborhood, other businesses, and the close proximity of any churches or schools. And finally, the Old Town Civic League is pro-business. Make no bones about it. And we see that the apparent loss of Brudy's is also a loss to our neighborhood and to the downtown in general and to Portsmouth at large. However, the loss is collateral damage as a result of its owner's ill-conceived business operations. I would like to thank all of you for your attention of this matter. If you have any questions.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Mayor.
you coming in. Good night.
Our next speaker is Ms. Valerie Cosnati.
Good evening, Mayor Wright, Vice Mayor Simmons, Council, City Manager, City Staff, fellow residents. I'm Valerie Cosnati, and my home is at 430 Court Street in Old Town. Not my house, not my residence, not my address, my home. I'm speaking in regard to City Council voting yes to revocation of the entertainment establishment use permit for 467 Court Street, Brudy's. The entertainment on floors 2 through 4 has had several names over 4 years. Mansion, Mansion Allure, Savoy, Complex, and now Mansion again. For the purpose of stating my views, I will refer to this venue as the Mansion. My focus will be vision principle, neighborhoods and a sense of community, reestablishment of peace, good order, and the general quietude of our neighborhood. I am a 14-and-a-half-year homeowner of 430 Court Street, 6 doors north from the Mansion. I have struggled with the impact the Mansion has had in our neighborhood over the last 4 years. It saddens me that a seasoned businessman such as Mr. Greenhood has turned his back on our neighborhood, and therefore I feel compelled to tell my story. I embrace living in an urban area, and I have not had any issues for the first 10-and-a-half years, only the last 4 years since the opening of the Mansion. In 2008, when the proposal for this establishment went before the Portsmouth Planning Commission, Mr. Greenhood, the owner of the Mansion, told me he was proposing to open a banquet hall for wedding receptions and bar mitzvahs. Brudy's restaurant had a solid reputation, and I took Mr. Greenhood at his word. It did not occur to me to ask him how he defined banquet hall. Well, it turned out this is indeed a club with the capacity of 1,099. Mr. Greenhood addressed our Civic League prior to the opening in August 2011, stating he and his wife were the owners, and the club would be open late evenings, Fridays, and Saturdays. This was not the case. We later discovered Mr. Greenhood had 25% ownership and Mr. Terry Webb had 75% ownership. This club was open Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays, and the Sunday prior to a Monday holiday. Additionally, on Fridays, it opened earlier at 5 p.m. When Mr. Greenhood spoke at the Civic League meeting prior to his August opening in 2011, again, we took him at his word. It did not occur to us to ask about opening other days of the week or earlier times. To say the least, Mr. Greenhood misrepresented his proposed establishment and was not forthcoming. This has affected the usual quietude for me, and that I can no longer sit on my front porch and enjoy my home in the neighborhood because of the patrons from the Mansion going back and forth to their vehicles throughout the evening. I have witnessed men urinating in my flower bed 8 feet from my porch, men and women changing clothing and adjusting their pants near their parked vehicles, food, beer bottles, vodka bottles, cigars, cigarettes, plastic cups everywhere. Every Saturday and Sunday morning, I clean up after them. I have found used condoms and women's used disposable sanitary items in the parking spaces in front of my home and across the street at Court Street Academy and Court Street Baptist Church fans, and it is appalling. Since August 13, 2011, nearly every Saturday and Sunday morning between 12:30 a.m. and 2:15 a.m., I am awakened by the roar of patrons leaving the Mansion, yelling and cursing, walking north on Court Street on their way to their vehicles, not to mention the numerous verbal and physical altercations. Several incidents come to mind with regards to the patrons of the Mansion. One, the Portsmouth Museum Gala annually hosts a fundraiser with a progressive evening ending at the Portsmouth Arts and Cultural Center across the street from the Mansion. They relocated their dessert and dancing event because ticket sales were low due to the fact that folks did not feel safe ending the evening across from the Mansion. My neighbors 2 doors south, who were young active duty military homeowners with a newborn infant, had an intoxicated patron from the Mansion try to break into their home one Saturday evening, Sunday morning at 1:15 a.m. They called 911. The police responded quickly, and as they were on the corner in their effort to keep patrons moving from the Mansion and get them out of town. The intoxicated patron passed out on their porch and was, sorry.
Thank you. We get it. Yes, ma'am.
Can I continue?
No,
or-
ma'am, you can.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Larry Pretty.
I have a handout for you.
Sure. Give it to the sergeant.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council, city officials, other city employees. My name is Larry Pretty. I reside at 361 Court Street with my wife, my college-age daughter. Have been a resident of Portsmouth for most of my life, graduated from Wilson High School, consider Portsmouth my home. I'm here tonight in support of the Planning Commission's revocation application. And I find it somewhat ironic that through all of this, there have been numerous opportunities for us to never get to this point. About 2 years ago, ultimately, a group of us contacted ABC. There's a copy of some of that correspondence in there. That came after an appearance by me before council on these various issues, a letter written to council members, which I will tell you I heard back from Mr. Moody and Mrs. Randall at the time, who were a little aghast at the content of the letter and at the conditions that I found, that they found in the letter. I would mention to you that as a quality of life, I got fired up about this when my then 17-year-old daughter woke me up at 2:30 in the morning, complaining about a noise out on the parking lot. I live on Court Street adjacent to the parking lot at the corner of Court and Glasgow. Public parking lot there, which at the time found itself pretty full on Friday and Saturday nights with patrons from the mansion who, for overflow purposes, had no place else to park and used the parking lot. When she woke me up and I went down there, she's telling me there's a woman outside screaming in the parking lot or making noise in the parking lot. And when I get there and look out the window, I find two guys and a woman having sex on the trunk of a car. That led me ultimately and a group of other individuals to go to the ABC board and ask for some help. I have to say, we attempted to get your help first. When that didn't happen, you left us no course but to proceed on our own. We've spent thousands of dollars, hired our own attorney, represented ourselves both before the local ABC hearing board, which occurs on a regular basis. Agent Simmons has been the investigator. You met him a few minutes ago. And ultimately to appear before ABC appeals hearings in Richmond after some of the outcome of these hearings didn't go Mr. Greenhood's way. Early on, he agreed to 8 modifications to the standard ABC license, which required him to perform in a certain manner. At some point in time, he decided he didn't like those modifications and appealed to have the modifications removed. That led to an all-day hearing that was brought on by that cause, along with other problems that ABC had found in their investigation. The local Portsmouth Police Department, with the help of Chief Hargis, his 2 lead investigators in the Commonwealth Attorney's Office, ultimately led that hearing officer to find against Mr. Greenhood. He subsequently appealed that hearing. It went to Richmond, and the Richmond ABC commissioners ruled against him yet again. We now find ourselves months later having ABC charged him again with additional issues. That hearing was held approximately 6 or 8 weeks ago. They ruled against him and asked for a revocation of his license. He has the right under Virginia law to appeal that revocation hearing finding to the ABC board in Richmond. That, however, would not be the end of it. If they chose to, in fact, rule against him, enforce the revocation, if you will, he still has the privilege of our local circuit court and an opportunity to, quote unquote, save the license. Now, whether he would do that or not is only for him to answer. I'm not sure that even however you address this matter tonight could not ultimately end up before the circuit court if he chose to fight the issue again. The Civic League is very pro-business. I'm a local business owner here in Portsmouth, a partner in a large business, and I can tell you we find it really, really disturbing to be on this side of the argument. He had 500 customers in Old Town that frequented the restaurant fairly often until things got out of hand. I appreciate you taking the time to hear this tonight. I'm sure you've had phone calls, letters, and other things that have come your way on this. But good order, peace, quietude, and the ability to join one's home shouldn't be trumped by an individual business.
Thank you, sir.
Dr. Wilbur Kersey.
Thank you for being willing to listen to us. I love Portsmouth. My family's lived here for 56 years. I wanted to speak about the history that is not very far removed from the importance of the Duke of Gloucester Street in Williamsburg. There's a lot of talk about how to have effective race relations. And I would like to say, and others can bear me out, Court Street Baptist Church for 226 years has stood in a positive position to promote the good, harmonious, loving, caring relationship between the citizens, the different citizens within our community. In March of this year, two churches among us celebrate their 150th anniversary, Ebenezer Baptist and Zion Baptist. And Court Street Church, the mother church, was the place for a service in the afternoon, a worship service, where Leroy Hill, the pastor of Ebenezer, Kelvin Turner, pastor of Zion, Robert Murray, the pastor of First Baptist Butte Street in Norfolk, and the choirs from the churches and the congregations gathered. My son is a member of Saddleback Community Church in Southern California, and I've been to many Billy Graham crusades. I would like to say the mayor was there, Paige Cherry was there, and maybe some of the rest of you. I've never in my life had a worship experience that was as inspiring as that. Court Street Baptist Church is one of the 10 oldest Baptist churches in Virginia. It is one of the 100 oldest Baptist churches in the United States. In the first 150 years, the African American and Caucasian members worshiped together and worked together in the ministry of Court Street Baptist Church. Jacob Bishop, an African American, was pastor of the congregation from 1790 through 94. An extremely gifted and charismatic man, the church grew. He went to Philadelphia later and was highly successful there as well. When the Emancipation Proclamation occurred, naturally there was a desire to establish separate churches. First Baptist Butte Street in Norfolk received the members that had been coming from Norfolk. Zion and Ebenezer were established, and the white and the Caucasian African-American members worked together for the establishment of those churches. Newspaper articles went out throughout the United States. Washington, D.C., New York City, Richmond, Virginia, places in Texas, Dallas, that spoke about the unusual situation between the African American and the Caucasian Christians who were in this ministry and broadening it extensively. So the history, in my opinion, that is right there in that location is just as significant and maybe more so than the Duke of Gloucester Street. I would like to say also that a study was made at Old Dominion University of architecture of churches in the United States and other public buildings. There was an architect, Reuben Hunt, from Chattanooga, Tennessee, who was outstanding, and he designed these buildings. First Baptist Butte Street and Calvary Revival Church in Newport News downtown, which was formerly First Baptist Church of Newport News, and Court Street are examples of his work, Romanesque architecture. But let me just read you a quick list of the other buildings that he designed and were built. The Harvard College Chapel, the Mormon Tabernacle in Salt Lake City, St. George's Episcopal Church in New York City and Fifth Avenue Baptist Church, the Astor Library in New York, the Union Depot in Providence, Rhode Island, Second Baptist Church, Atlanta, Georgia, First Baptist Church, Chattanooga, Tennessee, the Allegheny Courthouse in Pittsburgh, and as I've already mentioned, the Mormon Tabernacle Church in Salt Lake City. This is a book that presents all of this history. This, I've got 20 seconds, is a national magazine that happened to feature much of this information. We're pro-business, we're pro-Charles Greenhood. We're not in favor of the location of this type of entertainment facility in a historic area.
Thank you, Dr. Kersey. Well done, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing on item 15-244. At this time, if there's anyone in the audience that would like to speak but did not have an opportunity to register, please come forward, give your name and address, and you will have up to 5 minutes to speak on item 15-244.
Good evening. I'm Terry Danaher. I live at 413 Dinwiddie Street in Old Town. And I hadn't planned to speak tonight, but I did want to make a point that has been mentioned already by Mr. Hartley, and which disturbs me more than anything, and that was the issue about taxes. Because that cuts two ways for us, all of us here in Portsmouth. We aren't getting the tax dollars from the business that is running there and haven't been getting the tax dollars for years. In addition, it's costing us money. Every time the police are called to go there, we pay for that. And it's late at night, and there are a lot of disturbances. So that is the thing that bothers me most, is that I'm paying twice, because I'm paying my taxes. So I think that I speak for a lot of people when I say when we pay our taxes, we want to make sure that the services are being paid for by all the citizens here and all the businesses here. And this business is not doing what it's supposed to be doing. And that's really a very important aspect of all this. So I please, if you consider that above all, that's a lot of money. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Danaher.
City Councilman, ladies and gentlemen, feel like I'm at the Little Bighorn tonight. However, I will try to make these comments short. In answer to the tax question, the mansion operators who was a partner of mine failed to pay taxes for the last quarter of the year of 2012. And subsequent to that, I canceled the lease and ejected them. There's quite a bit that went on that may or may not have been alluded to. However, I'm going to read through this and hopefully you'll understand a little bit more after I get finished. In 2011, when I was part of the opening of the Mansion nightclub, our vision was to create a world-class, vibrant, multi-purpose entertainment establishment. I never lied about that, never carried any promises about exactly what we're going to do, and planning approved that. Focusing on cultural diversity in music and patrons, I was comfortable with this concept because that very important part of the equation was diversity. Brudy's was already well established in 2011. Brudy's modest beginning as a coffee cart selling coffee and bagel nuts at Portside was exciting then and eventually grew into one of the most popular and successful restaurants and catering businesses in Hampton Roads. We're in the business of hospitality, the business of making our guests feel happy and comfortable. I hope that Mansion would carry that concept forward, and I believe it would. What a dream it was. In 2011, I would have never imagined the fallout from our public, specifically the Old Town Civic League. I had no contemplation that this vision of diversity would be thrown out in favor of putting more money into the bank. How many $1,000 bottles of champagne could be sold? How many bottles of vodka? That was always more important to the folks who were running the Mansion upstairs for me. The money was great. Mansion fell victim to the greatest deadly sin, and that was greed. I've always shared my success with the community, given freely to organizations, the city, and social causes. Greed was not a true fit for me ever, a contradiction of my lifelong behavior. Well, enough had become enough, and I shuttered the Mansion on the 24th of July of 2012. 11 months after our opening. The management team in charge was way out of line, and I felt it was my responsibility to make it right. Only those close to me know how badly this all troubled me. The most troubling was that I disappointed the very people who sustained my business and made Brudy's successful for the previous 19 years. The picture I painted, the promises I made to the community, council members, and my own family were regrettable. By the time I closed Mansion, Brudy's had become a leper, a miserable pariah. The last couple years since I closed Mansion, we have had some wedding events, we've had receptions, comedy nights, which become very successful, and some dance party events upstairs. There's not much I can say to defend myself against baseless complaints from a few of the folks in our community whose only agenda is to shut us down. When someone calls the police about a disturbance, shots fired, fornication in cars, drunk and disorderly, the police have an obligation to send many units, as many as they need, because they really don't know what to expect. All these calls become part of a record, even if they are not true. The neighborhood hysteria is very unfortunate and points to an overall problem with our society's social consciousness today. When it comes to sensitivity, we have to do some very deep searching to find that in Old Town sometimes. Brudy's Restaurants has served its last meal as of Sunday, Father's Day. My gift to the Old Town Civic League. However, I will always love Portsmouth.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members, City Attorney, and also our City Manager and City Clerk. My name is Tony Goodwin. Not only a resident of Parkview, adjacent here to downtown, but also practicing as a commercial real estate agent, and have some people refer to me as downtown as my sandbox. I do get out, obviously, out of the city sometimes to do business deals with the real estate and development. But one thing I do want to make sure that you're aware, before making your decision tonight, Mr. Hartley did state that obviously this the revocation of this use permit does follow the property, and that future is very important here at this address. And the reason I bring this to your attention is that we do have a lot of key properties along High Street that are sitting vacant, that are very, very difficult to bring to the market in a positive way and be able to fill those in many different needs. And the list is long. You know, to start off with, this is the Colony Theater and how long it has obviously had to restart and try again and so on and so forth. Montgomery Square, another good example of all of the retail space on the first floor. Hopefully, fingers crossed, things are going to happen here soon. And then furthermore, things such as the current building on the upper floors that have been vacant for almost 13 and a half years is now finally, hopefully, seeing some new light towards the end of this year. But with that being said, the future of this address at 467 Court Street is a very key component, and that your decision tonight in counseling with the city attorney to make sure that the future is bright for any other potential owner of that property, we have to take into consideration it is historically meeting halls of the Masonic Lodge. And so those spaces historically, if someone is doing a renovation to a historic tax credit, as I understand, cannot do much with those rooms except for leave them as a meeting or social hall. So that is very key in your decision tonight, just to make sure that we do not have the 467 Court Street sit there vacant for years on end, just because it has the stigma that carries along with it. So again, I just implore you to take and to make that decision carefully tonight, and consider the fact that we would like to see as many of our properties downtown occupied, flourishing, creating tax dollars, creating people. We've got residents coming left and right, thankfully now, and we want to keep the momentum going. So I appreciate your consideration in that effect.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, honorable members of council, and fellow citizens. I hadn't expected to speak on this item, although I contemplated it, but some of what I've heard in the last couple of minutes I find profoundly inaccurate, and it disturbs me deeply. As a former resident of Old Town and as a life member of the Civic League, I cannot stand silent when the members of the league who were longtime neighbors, and I consider everybody in Portsmouth a neighbor, so they're still neighbors of mine, to hear their assertions dismissed as being vengeful, and to have the implication that people stood up here and made statements that were not truthful is deeply disturbing to me. Irv Lindley, Valerie Cosnati, these are people of integrity. I have a great deal of regard for Charles Greenhood. I've known him a long time. I've eaten many a good meal in his establishment. But I feel that during the time he was renovating that building, he found himself in an endless spiral of expense, unanticipated issues, and probably far exceeded his budget for that renovation. And so he needed some way of trying to recoup his investment and keep the foundational business afloat. I haven't reviewed his books. I'm talking based on my own analysis of what may have gone on. I could be completely off base. But I feel that what has gone on in the last several years has been a desperate attempt to salvage a good business and stay financially afloat. I'm saddened to hear him impugn the character of good people who are trying to protect their investments in their homes and their neighborhood and our city, because the Old Town Civic League has invested money that it has raised in improvement of the city as a whole through grants to various charitable organizations, to the police force for the maintenance of the mounted patrol, and to build a park on Middle Street that the city did not invest its resources in. So it's just a sad situation, but I feel for your credibility as a governing body, if you put conditions into a use permit and then fail to enforce them, then you have no credibility. Then you're not doing your job, and you're not protecting the interests of the citizens as a whole. So I would urge you in sum to accept the recommendation from the Planning Department and revoke the use permit. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Council members, seeing no additional citizens come forward.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, and you'll be voting electronically. This item is adopted 7-0. Unfinished business consent agenda 15-223 rezoning and use permits. Item A, ordinance granting the request of Michael Perry, representing Commonwealth Assisted Living, for a rezoning to expand an existing assisted living facility. The expansion request is for 24 additional beds a new entrance, and additional parking. The request includes 4904 and 4908 West Norfolk Road. Z1502, first reading vote, 7-0 approved. Vision Principle, Neighborhoods, and Sense of Community. Item B, resolution granting the request of Michael Perry, representing Commonwealth Assisted Living, for a use permit to expand an existing assisted living facility. The expansion request is for 24 additional beds, a new entrance, and additional parking. The request includes 4904, 4908, 4916, and 4940 West Norfolk Road. UP 1502, first reading vote, 7-0 approved. Vision Principle, Neighborhoods, and Sense of Community. Final adoption by electronic roll call, and I have no registered speakers.
It's two.
Excuse me?
She can't speak.
All right, there's a motion and a second.
We have a motion and a. Ms. Sy, which item are you trying to speak on? I have you under item C, which is the next item. Yes. We're not there yet.
Move for adoption.
We have a motion and a second, and you're voting electronically. This item is adopted 7-0. 15-223, use permit, item C, resolution granting the request of Stephen E. Heretic on behalf of Per Properties for a use permit to operate a concrete processing facility, including the use of portable stone crushing equipment at 3991 Elm Avenue. Per Properties is also requesting to deviate from the access and screening requirements for heavy industrial facilities in the IN Heavy Industrial District. UP 1505, first reading vote, 3-4 denied. Vision Principle, a robust economy for working men and women. Electronic roll call, and I have speakers. The first speaker is Ms. Donna Sy.
Good evening. My name is Donna Sy, and I live in the Woodbine Farms neighborhood. Principles of Liberty 8, men are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Our founding fathers did not believe that the basic rights of mankind originated from any social compact, king, emperor, or government authority. Our rights, they believed, came directly and exclusively from God. William Blackstone was a British legal scholar who studied, analyzed, and commented on law during the 18th century. He wrote, "Unalienable rights have been established by God and nature and are called natural rights. Life and liberty do not need the aid of human laws to be invested in every man, nor do these rights receive any additional strength when declared by municipal law. No human legislature has power to lessen or destroy these rights, unless the owner himself commits some act that causes him to lose his rights." Thomas Jefferson wrote in the Declaration of Independence, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its power in such form as to them shall seem more likely to affect their safety and happiness. We, the good people of Portsmouth, are laying a foundation to affect our safety and happiness. We, the people in Portsmouth, have begun to experience the government usurping or taking hold of our right to self-govern. It is our right and our duty to to address our grievances regarding this in the form of its denial of the use permit UP 15-223. This denial is in opposition to the vision of we the people of Portsmouth envisioned to create a strong financial economy for working men and women. We the good people of Portsmouth have signed a petition to declare that we want to override your previous denial of UP 15223. We want the council to approve UP 15223. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Mark Godola-Gutrovsky.
Good evening again, Mr. Mayor, honorable members of council, and fellow citizens. I do not often agree with what columnists and editorial writers for the Virginian Pilot tell us to do. But I think Mr. Roger Chesley's column, was pitch perfect in this morning's paper. I'm not a big fan of concrete plants. I spent several years as a volunteer working for the Virginia Sierra Club on air quality issues. And so I'm very hawkish about industrial developments that have the potential to pollute our air. The property on which this concrete plant is proposed to have its operations is at what I consider sufficient remove from habitations and other vulnerable uses. So I don't see that as a principal factor in this decision. As Mr. Chesley said, and I'm paraphrasing, reports of revenues are generally exaggerated in just about every case. In the 19 years that I have followed council actions in the city, we've had numerous proposals that were supposed to bring millions of dollars in new tax revenue to our coffers, and they haven't. Only one, the APM project, came anywhere close to its projections. And it continues to be a fundamental support of our general fund. So whether or not we get $600,000 in new revenue, we will be getting new revenue. We will be getting new revenue from a piece of property that cannot be marketed for Class A office towers or luxury condominiums. It is an industrial site. It is adjacent to a Superfund site. And the fact that we can use it for any purpose at all and put it on the tax rolls is significant. The other piece of this equation that's significant is PER Properties has acquired it. It is in private hands. And we have a responsibility, if there is no health or safety consideration that precludes a property owner doing what he or she intends on the property they've purchased and the check did not bounce, we should do our best to help them. We should do our best to allow them to do business. So our failure to do our part in this will work against us in terms of future economic development. Word travels throughout the private sector. And if you do not follow through on your commitments, it will be known, and you can hire the best economic development director in the world, and that's not going to undo the damage that you've done to our reputation as a place that's hospitable to business. Therefore, I would ask the four of you who voted for this, voted against this last time, to reconsider your votes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Any other speakers?
Yes. No, that's our last speaker.
That's the last speaker. Let me, if I could, and I recognize, I see Dr. Whitaker, and then we got a motion in a second, all at the same time. Let me just say, and I've publicly said this before, and tonight's a prime example of these use permits and the municipality and how we control and have oversights of these things and how we loosely just give these things out and allow you, the public, to come in here with your frustration because someone has been given a use permit by this city and have done some things that has done major damage to our quality of life. Now, this is an industrial site, and these people that are here have done an excellent job of reframing the argument and making it about $600,000 and whether or not we're pro-business or we're not pro-business. This, to me, and I've said this from day one, is about process. And this notion of individuals coming into this city, providing proposals and making statements that here's what I want to do, and here's what I'd like to do, and here's the jobs and the revenue and all of those types of things. And midstream of that, want to make a change, don't deliver, just like Mark just said in his comments, never deliver on the revenue, but to put the council or to put the elected officials in a corner, let's just say we're going to bring all this money in, okay? You heard this same argument with casinos. You know, forget about the quality of life, forget about all those things. We're going to bring millions in, so you should vote in favor of it. And this isn't about whether or not we should be crushing concrete. It isn't about whether we're pro-business or not. It is about process. And when you come to this city, and we got a company here that's been in business for 35 years in Virginia Beach, doing granary operations, and came here to expand that granary operation. And I'm very disturbed with some of the terms and how that property, one, was acquired, and I was not here for that, to sell 16 acres for the price that it happened. It happened. The deal's done for $1 million. And then to find out that it's being financed by the city, owner financed, or by the PPIC, and you got a business that's been in business for 35 years in Virginia Beach, and we're owner financing this deal. And so the PPIC is the owner of this, or the note holder. And then they come up here and speak in favor of changing or issuing this additional use permit to this company who said they were coming here for one reason, which really creates a conflict of interest, because if you're the note holder and then you coming into the council and you're making statements in the affirmative saying you think this, I mean, you're kind of feathering your own cap. I mean, the process here is the issue. And then there's an integrity piece, and there's a way in how there's always, let's try to out-politicize the next guy because I can get you through on this. We'll find somebody doing it on the other side of the river. We'll use revenue. The city really needs money, so if you throw this revenue smokescreen up, you know, they're going to be in favor because nobody wants to vote against it. I got a real problem with that. You just heard all those arguments with this company here that we gave a use permit to. We've got a valuable piece of land out on Victory Boulevard called Victory Village that this council gave wide open access to all kinds of permits to allow the developer to do whatever he wanted to do. And he promised all of these things, and it's been 12 years, and that one John Brown thing has been done. We've given him use permits to do whatever he wants, and now we're in a process right now, a council trying to figure out why did the city allow all this to happen? We got to now claw back some of this, but in the effort of we're going to bring all this money to your city, we're going to do all of these things, we don't want to stand up for process and do what's right for the citizens because the political tone or whatever, whether they done got a newspaper columnist to write an article in their favor, and you read that article and you can tell who were the two people that allowed that article to go in the post. It's a problem, the process. And we got to get control of that because the quality of life in our city and the respectability of when you come and say you're going to do something, you do it. And if you've been operating a granary company for 35 years in Virginia Beach and you're not crushing concrete and you come here and we give you a sweet deal and then we finance it for you and then you come in here midstream and want to change and do something else and say, oh, by the way, I'm going to still do my granary operation, I got a problem with that. Okay? This isn't about whether or not I want Portsmouth to get more revenue or not. That's ludicrous. You know we need more revenue. But you need to stop selling yourself short that everybody comes in here with rose-colored glasses on and go get people that supposedly have credibility with your council to try to push some issue through. And speaking of credibility, there's some major credible issues with this deal and this individual, and I've got a real heart spot with it. And when it comes out in the public of what we have done and what we're dealing with and how we're going forward, I think you're going to respect the position that your mayor took. So with that, I'm done, and I'm going to vote no. Dr. Whitaker.
Yes. Do we have representatives from Per Property present?
They're present, but they didn't register.
Can we ask questions?
Sure.
Yeah.
Is there a representative from PURE here, P-E-R, or I see Mr. Heretic, and is that the owner I'm looking at right there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, good evening, Steve Heretic. I'm counsel for PER Properties. Tonight we have the owner, Jim Sammons. We have the development manager, Robert Crockett. We have representatives of the PPIC. We have representatives of the Planning Commission. We're here to answer any questions you might have.
Very good. Dr. Whitaker.
Okay. And is the representative of the PPIC also here?
Yes. We have Captain George Watkins, who was here.
Is he familiar with the transaction?
I believe he is, Dr. Whitaker. Yes.
Okay. I'd like to ask him a question.
Captain,
also.
could you come up, please?
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. My name is George E. Watkins. I'm a lifelong resident of Portsmouth and a member of the Portsmouth Port Industrial Commission.
Yes. Mr. Watkins, are you familiar with when this deal was originally put together?
Yes, I am.
The PPIC, from our information, the PPIC funded this process, this project of $1.3 million. Is that correct?
1.29, yes.
Okay. When that project was it advertised as a self-funding project?
I am not sure of that, sir, but I can tell you this, that the assessed value of that property was $1,060,000.
Well,
and the price that we decided on was 1.29.
That's
Am I
not
familiar with that? No, I'm not.
That's not my issue. My issue is that the property was self-funded, that we use public instruments to finance that project. Was the public at large made known that that was available if you were interested in purchasing that property?
I'm not sure, Dr. Whitaker.
But you said you were part of that process. Did that occur at the beginning, that when it was advertised or presented to the public, that if you wanted it financed, that it could be financed through PPIC? Or did that occur after the fact?
I would assume that it occurred after that fact.
So why did it occur after the fact? After now you have a person at the table interested in purchasing the property, why did it occur after the fact?
when the item came before the PPIC, sir, we were looking at a piece of property that had been vacant for 60 years.
Okay.
And I think we were so glad to see it be sold, I really didn't ask those questions.
Okay. So were there any questions asked as to the credibility of the purchaser?
We met, I'm trying to see, I've got my notes. We met, the letter of intent was executed in January of 2010, and a couple of meetings we had with them. Mr. Salmons was there. Mr. Crockett was there.
Mayor, I don't see what the purpose of going through the purchase. This deal's been down the road. We're here to vote on a use permit. He's going through a deal that's been done for 2-3 years now. We can't go back and backtrack a deal.
Okay, Mr. Meeks, you're out of order. First, you need to raise a point of order, and then I'll rule on that.
All right, I'll raise the point of order.
Okay. And if your point is what Mr. Meeks's point is, you're both out of order. Mr. Whitaker, you can continue.
The reason I'm asking this is to get to process, and also there has been significant criticism over the decisions that we made in voting against this, as if this was just some arbitrary decision that 4 African American males made. The fact that...
Would you repeat that, sir?
I'm saying the reason I'm asking these questions, and it's directed to council more than you, that,
point of order.
That there has been quite a bit of discussion
Mayor,
and commentary
Excuse me, Dr. Whitaker. Mr. Moody, your point of order. What is your point, sir?
My point is the question is totally out of line. This is a business that's been in place for a number of years. This is not a court of law. It's not a place where you impugn the integrity of people. And also, I'd like to ask, call upon the interim city attorney to explain the proper procedure on how to handle a point of order.
Well, Mr. Let me say that I have heard your point of order, and I ruled it out of order.
You have to vote it.
You
have to vote it.
That has to
vote it.
Absolutely.
Dr. Whitaker has rights to ask this question. Madam Attorney, would you please?
Yes, I did understand that there was a point of order raised, and that the mayor asked that Dr. Whitaker continue. So he did ask that you continue when you raised your second point of order. So I believe we're incorrect. We're correct right now.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Whitaker.
Because I just want the citizens to know that I didn't make an arbitrary and random decision. The whole process as far as moving forward with the additional requests, the fact that we have a financing that is being provided out of the ordinary, and also the fact that the party that's involved with this transaction has had previous bank fraud conviction. And I'm trying to figure, as a council member, how is it that we allow persons in one area to get the benefit of public instruments, but yet in other transactions throughout our Commonwealth and the city, they can't participate. This type of background with a bank fraud conviction doesn't merit using public instruments to purchase properties. And I didn't realize that the council could be involved in such type of transaction. And is that a common practice? And was that something that the council was aware of? And so this isn't an arbitrary decision, but it is based on this whole process. I mentioned at the last council meeting that the process that this went through, even purchasing the property, and now that it has come to the attention that there was a public instrument used in a process in which there has been a conviction of bank fraud, I have an issue with that, and I could not in good conscience vote to extend when the credibility of what's being presented to us as far as numbers and the expected income and employment, there's a credibility issue there when we have such type of conviction. And so I'm I'm going to continue my vote today as far as no, based on the fact that the instrument that was used was improper, and also the fact that we don't offer this type of assistance to others who have gone along such type of routes with our court system. And that is not to try to impugn the integrity of the person. That is just trying to tell the truth about the processes that we have used in the past.
Thank you, Dr. Wood. Do you have, anyone else have anything for these two gentlemen? Thank y'all very much. Mr. Meeks.
Thank you. Can I have
Thank
Mr.
y'all very
Baldwin
much. Y'all
come
can
up,
take a
please?
seat. You asked him for, oh.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Good evening.
Could you state what you do for the city, if you don't mind?
I'm the city's planning director.
Are you over zoning also?
The zoning enforcement is handled through the Department of Neighborhood Advancement. That's Fred Brusso's department.
Do we have any ordinance in place right now to stop or say that we need a use permit for concrete crushing?
Yes.
We do have an ordinance.
Yeah, the zoning code was amended back in the late fall to allow this type of use with a use permit approved by City Council.
But prior to that, we have none?
Prior to that, the code did not allow this use. It was a prohibited use.
All right, so if we were already using that property for a concrete crushing operation, would that be grandfathered?
We'd have to verify when the use would have started. And I think in this property's case, the use of a temporary concrete crushing for on-site construction was determined to be okay, not as a permanent use.
But at the time that they did the temporary, we had no zoning, we didn't need a use permit for concrete.
Right, that was considered construction activity, not the permanent use of the site.
What I'm asking is, did the city have an ordinance at the time for concrete crushing? Did we need a use permit?
Okay, at the time, as far as a permanent use of a concrete crusher,
yes,
the zoning ordinance did not permit that in 2010.
All right, that's all. Thank you.
Did not permit that.
That's correct. Was not allowed.
That's right. Thank you. All right. Any other questions? Okay. I think there was a motion by the Vice Mayor.
We have a motion and a second to adopt this item. This item is adopted 5-2. City Manager's Report 15-245, adoption of an ordinance to appropriate $655,981 in the FY 2014-15 Capital Improvement Fund for the FY 2014-15 Donations Fund for the continued implementation of the electronic health record system for the Department of Behavioral Health Care Services, Vision Principle, Neighborhoods and Sense of Community, electronic roll call, and I have no registered speakers.
Move for approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second, and you'll be voting electronically. This item is adopted 7-0. 15-246, adoption of an ordinance to realign FY 2014-15 classification funding for the Portsmouth Public Schools operating budget, Vision Principles, Quality of Life, and Lifelong Learning Community. Electronic roll call, and I have no registered speakers.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, and you'll be voting electronically. This item is adopted 7-0. 15-247, adoption of an ordinance to appropriate $28,141 of funding received from the State Compensation Board in the FY 15-16 General Fund operating budget to fund part-time positions in the Sheriff's Department, Vision Principle, Efficient Responsive Government, electronic roll call, and I have no registered speakers.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, and you're voting electronically. This item is adopted 7-0. 15-248, Adoption of an ordinance to appropriate $93,460.79 of funding received from the U.S. the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration in the FY 2015-16 Asset Forfeiture Fund for the Sheriff's Department. Vision Principle, Efficient Responsive Government, electronic roll call, and I have no registered speakers.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, and you'll be voting electronically. This item is adopted 7-0. 15-249, adoption of an ordinance to amend Article 1 of Chapter 35 of the Code of the City of Portsmouth, Virginia by adopting a new Section 35-9.1 pertaining to a personal property tax exemption for certain motor vehicles owned by eligible disabled veterans. Vision Principle, proud military community. Electronic roll call, and I have no registered speakers.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, and you're voting electronically. This item is adopted 7-0. New business 15-250, boards and commissions. Councilman Edmonds.
Thank you. Have no reports at this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
15-251, items submitted by council members.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Let me first of all say what a real privilege it was last week to attend a mural unveiling ceremony at the City Park for on behalf of the supporters of the Portsmouth arts. There was a nice mural there of former Mayor James Holley in his golf attire, and it was just a grand affair. The Vice Mayor and I were there. That organization has done some great things throughout this city. There are murals throughout this city. We just have the Commodore Baron right here on Court Street. Where is the, I haven't seen the trout. Where are they located? Oh, on Dunwoody, the trout. And so thanks to that organization and to the artists who did the mural for the former mayor. And I want to encourage any of you, if you haven't been out to City Park, to please go out and take a look at it. And it was great seeing former First Lady Mary Holley in attendance, as well as the Holley family. And those are great times and great things there. I also want to just say, well, let me just, I'll yield to the Vice Mayor. Go ahead. You normally go through a litany of all the other events, and so I don't want to duplicate. I don't want to duplicate because you do that so well. And then I'll, Vice Mayor Simmons.
Thank you, sir. I do want to go through a litany of events that will happen before we are together again, namely 4th of July weekend. We have a lot of things that happen in the city and are really special and part of our history. And I'll start in Craddock. On the 4th of July is the 97th Annual Patriotic Salute, and if you've never been to Afton Square on 4th of July morning, I encourage you to do so. They have a wonderful children's bike parade at 9:30, and if you don't live in Craddock, I bet if you took your child over with their bike, they could participate also. At 10 o'clock, there's a flag raising. I'm sure the mayor will have a word to say. It's a wonderful little hometown event in Craddock, and that's at 9:30. Is the bike parade, and 10 o'clock is the flag raising at Afton Square in Craddock on the morning of the 4th of July. The night before that, on Friday, July 3rd, the Old Town Business Association is sponsoring dinner and a drive-in at what we now call Portside Park, which is formerly where the Holiday Inn Hotel was located. The movie American Graffiti will be shown on the on a big screen on the side of the parking garage at 9:30, and although you won't be sitting in your car watching it, you can bring a chair. Tony Goodwin promises me there'll be some food trucks and good things to buy to eat and drink and watch American Graffiti. And get yourself all ready for Saturday the 4th. After you've been to Craddock in the morning, you come back downtown in the afternoon. At that same location where the Holiday Inn Hotel used to be, at 6:30 there will be the Billy Joel Trio from 6:30 to 7:30. Followed by the Tidewater Concert Band, which is a big orchestra, the one that plays for us every year at the Memorial Day Parade. They will be playing from 8 to 9:30, and then they'll stop at 9:30 when the fireworks go off. And that's a beautiful place to be sitting to watch the fireworks. So I encourage everybody to pay attention to all those events. In addition, there is a prayer initiative on Saturday morning on the Saturday noontime on the water stage, followed by some jazz events later in July. PortsVAEvents.com will give you more information and more details. Happy 4th.
See, I told you, she nailed it. And let me just, and I see Dr. Whitaker, I'm going to yield to you in a second. I do want to say, just after our last meeting, we had our high school graduations over here at Intellos, like we do every year. And I think the Tuesday of the council meeting, Woodrow Wilson had their graduation, and then it was Norcom and then Churchland. I just want to say congratulations to all of the kids and the parents, and again, the great things that are going on in our school system. I failed to recognize our superintendent was here in attendance, as well as our chairman of the school board. They're no longer here, but I want to applaud them as well as all of our teachers and students for a great job. Enjoy this summer. Let's come back in the fall and hit it again. We've got work to do here. We're proud of our young people. We're proud of all of our schools. I see Dr. Kersey came up. It was just a serious matter that he spoke on, but I wanted to put in a plug for Court Street Academy and the great work that's going on there. Our bishop here at St. Mark Missionary Academy and the great work, the graduations. I've seen it all over social media, the kids performing, and that's just what we're about. And again, I just don't like for those things to go unnoticed. I know it's been a couple of, not quite a couple of weeks, but I want to say thanks to all of y'all that work that make this the place that it is. With that, Dr. Whitaker.
Yes, Mayor, I just wanted to get a consensus from the council. In our meeting last night, the disparity study was presented, and we need to move to the next step of getting a policy implemented. And I wanted to get a consensus from council at our July meeting to have a transformation consultant who works with our school board, work with the school board on that policy development, if we could bring them in for a presentation, if that is the desire of the council.
Okay. Let me just ask, I think we're all in agreement with that. Is that correct? Yeah. As far as where we go from here, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but we want to create the policy, but once we create a policy, well, if you could do that here, now, tonight, or maybe at the next meeting, kind of walk us through, and thank you for chairing the committee, by the way, to see us through this, but I'd like us to walk us through the public, how we're going to get to where we want to get to, and how we plan to see this unfold. So if you could take that task on.
Right. What we just received was the disparity study, which because of the law of the country, before you implement any minority women, race-conscious, race-neutral programs, you have to have a disparity study to show that there has been a statistically significant difference in the utilization of minority women businesses, which the study supported. And so, therefore, we have the legal framework to now move forward with implementing a policy. And so once we implement the policy and we have the council on board with the policy, then we can implement our MWBE program. And so transformation consulting, that was the process they went through with our school board. And I think it's a benefit to us because we have a model that we can duplicate, and also there may be some opportunities to combine some things there. And so I think that would be an excellent opportunity for transformation to present that information to us so we can move forward and actually develop a program that would be a model for other cities.
Okay. All right, very good. Now, and let me just add, I think we have the consensus. Yes,
okay.
to go ahead forward with that. I want to just say, and I was at the school board meeting probably a couple of months ago when they did their annual review of their women and minority-owned business program, and the statistics and the amount of contracting and the things that they were able to achieve under that program, I thought was fascinating. I think it was one area that they did not achieve is it aspirational goals? The goals that they had set, but to see what they've done in a short time and making sure that the playing field is level for anyone that wants to do work in this city is it was very impressive. And so she actually gave the annual report to the school board. That's the same person that we want to bring here for July.
Right.
Very good. Mr. Moody.
Thank you, Mayor. Dr. Whitaker is bringing up implementation, and obviously we all know that it also creates a new position. I think one that's currently in the budget of, I think the salary was like $59,000. What I would like to see us do, since we are a fiscally challenged city, is to partner with the school board. I'm sure they have a similar position, and I wouldn't think that position would be to the point of being overworked, where we can partner with them and hopefully save the taxpayer some money and cut down on the bureaucracy.
Well, I think that's precisely what we had in mind as soon as we got our program set up. And Dr. Whitaker?
Yeah, I thought I mentioned that there may be some opportunities there for collaboration, partnering with the city, which, as you know, we could have done that at the very beginning and saved the citizens quite a bit of money on the study. So hopefully we can do that. And I think with a new manager coming on board, new relationships, that I think that will be something that we can achieve.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we definitely need those collaborations and being able to, wherever we can share costs and services to benefit both the city, the school, and which ultimately helps the taxpayers. Okay, anybody else there? All right,
Yeah,
Madam Clerk.
I did have another item I wanted to bring to council, and that is, as we know, last Wednesday we witnessed a horrific event with the taking of 9 innocent lives there at Emmanuel AME Church. And we know that that killer was motivated by much of the racist rhetoric and symbols that still exist in our society today. We have seen now that the state of South Carolina is moving towards removing the Confederate flag off of public property. And we heard today that our governor is looking to have the Confederate license plates removed out of our Commonwealth system. Those symbols feed into the mentalities of people who tend to escalate and do harm to persons in our society simply based on who they are and the color of their skin. I think that it is appropriate and past time that the city of Portsmouth look within itself and see that we also have some very racist symbols in our city. One in particular being the Confederate Memorial that is at the corner of Court and High Street. Those men that are being honored had their desires gone forward, then a process of killing, terrorism, intimidation, subhuman treatment through a system of slavery would have continued. And I think that for that symbol to be in a public place is highly inappropriate. If it is to be celebrated, it should be celebrated amongst individuals and on private property. And I think if we're going to move forward as a city, that we need to remove those types of symbols out of our city so that we can show respect for humanity and one another, and also so that we don't feed into the types of mentalities that are out here that would lead persons to believe that people are subhuman. And so I would ask this council that we would seriously consider looking at removing that vestige of racism that is represented in that Confederate monument. It is said that there is even a Confederate flag that was placed in that monument. And so as an African American citizen, but as an elected official, I think it is incumbent upon me to raise that issue as we move forward to trying to respect the humanity of all people.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Whitaker. Any other comments? Let me just, before we get to our non-agenda speakers, say I had the pleasure of taking my daughter down to Georgia Tech this weekend to start a summer program. She's going and majoring in chemical engineering, and we got about halfway there. I think we were in Charlotte, and I stopped at a gas station, and right on the headline of the Charlotte Observer was the word senseless or shameless or one or the other, and it had a picture of all 9 of those folks. And I immediately left that gas station and took my 4 daughters to Charleston, South Carolina. We went about 6 hours out of the way because I thought it was extremely important that my girls see what hate and racism and mean-spirited people can do to destroy something that we've been working on in this country for years. And I was quite surprised when I got to Charleston, South Carolina, and saw the outpouring of people from all across this country coming there. They had to shut part of the town down because it was so many people bringing flowers. They were of all races, and it was quite an event. It was Friday when I got there, and I had to leave. I think we only stayed there about an hour and a half, and we got back on the road and went back down to Atlanta. But and it's again, Dr. Whitaker, I agree with you. I just think we need to work together and continue to work together to make sure these type of things, and whether it's this young man or the system or however or whoever taught this hate, those are the type of things that are within our society that we need to root out. I think Dr. Kersey just came up and talked about the history of Court Street and a lot of those relations that have gone on since the beginning of time, and things like that that go unnoticed and unheard of, and things like this paint a picture of all of us that most of us know isn't true, but the realities are those things still exist in our country, and we've got to work together to be able to root that out. And again, it just came across my heart that I thought my young daughters needed to be able to see that, and it was worth the 5-hour detour to go down and see that. And I don't know how each of you individually feel, and when you heard that and when you saw that, and what it makes you think about us as a people, but it was quite touching, and I'm sure I see some heads nodding that it was reciprocated. All right, Madam Clerk.
Report on pending items, Ms. Bernadette Hogg.
Good evening, Mayor, members of City Council. I'm Bernadette Hogg, City Ombudsman, and would like to give you the report on the non-agenda speakers and pending items for the council meeting on June 9, 2015. There were 5 non-agenda speakers at the council meeting on June 9, 2015. One of the speakers required action by staff. Roscoe Williams was concerned about a city tree causing damage to the sidewalk in the 1600 block of Lansing Avenue. After surveying the tree and the sidewalk, the Public Works Director made the determination that the roots from the tree are causing a trip hazard that cannot be corrected unless the tree and stump are removed. The Director of General Services has begun the process of having a contractor look at the tree and provide a cost and time frame for removal. It should be noted that Dominion Power was also contacted to trim the branches of the tree away from the power lines until the tree can be removed. And I wanted to update you on Mrs. Fagan to let you know that the mail and the packages have been delivered in the past month to her liking.
Thank you. Very good. Thank you very much.
15-253 non-agenda speakers. Our first speaker is Sheriff William Watson.
Evening, ladies and gentlemen of the council. On a lighter note, let's go watch American Graffiti. Sounds like a winner to me. If you want a better movie than that, there's one called Hollywood Nights. You got to look it up. It's a hilarious movie. What I'm here about tonight is, on June 9th, it was mentioned that my gas bill for the sheriff's office was $135,000. It was insinuated that taxpayers are paying for my gas bill. It comes out of my budget, okay? But let me tell you where it averages out now. Okay, I have 59 vehicles, okay? The average cost of the gas was $2.75 a gallon, which made 49,000 gallons of gas, okay? Now, out of 49,000, I have 59 vehicles, which is 832 gallons per vehicle over a 52-week period, okay, which comes out to 16 gallons a week is what it averages out to. Of course, when you say $135,000, you go, sticker shock, okay? 16 gallons a week per vehicle is what we're burning. But with that 16 gallons a week, what you're getting is we have 33 trips to the DNA crime lab, 147 trips to the Department of Corrections, 874 trips to detention center for the juveniles, 2 federal correctional facility trips, 13 juvenile correctional facility trips, 3 local doctor's appointments, 4 local hospital trips. We had 2,132 trips from the jail just to courts. And that's not counting back, that's just one way. They had 3 miscellaneous trips. We had out of area jail, which is Hampton Roads Regional, had 196 trips there. State mental facilities, we had 48 trips, which is a total of 3,455 trips on 16 gallons of gas per week. Now, that's not counting Civil Process Division. Okay, we had 53 protective orders. We had 38,661 subpoenas served, 38,941 other papers served. We had 882 evictions, 2,272 posted evictions. We had 547 funeral escorts. That's counting motorcycles, cars, and what have you. Now we have 198 assisted escorts. What that means is funerals that are larger where it takes more than 2 people to escort that funeral. You might need 3, sometimes 4, depending on how large the funeral is. That's where you come in with 198 assisted escorts. Now, they also served a grand total of 99,701 papers at $12 a paper. We generated $1,049,964 for the city of Portsmouth on $135,000 worth of gas. Thought y'all might like to know that. Have a nice night.
Thank you. Sheriff, let me ask you while you're up, if you could, do you have a policy in your department on who gets to drive a vehicle and what rank or what purpose? Because I know there are certain functions that we in the state fund that require transportation, but is there a policy and a reason why we need 59 vehicles? And you don't need to answer that. Like, if you got a policy, you can get us a copy.
Every vehicle we've got is being used for public service. Now you have to understand, we've got like 4 or 5 vans where we're doing public service. We were doing it for the city of Portsmouth until they cut our budget. But we were cutting grass for that. In fact, our ombudsman, Bernadette, used to call us sometimes 2 or 3 times a day for grass being cut in different areas, like VDOT, the off-ramps. That's not VDOT's problem. It's the city of Portsmouth's problem.
I asked about the policy. Do you have a policy that you could supply us that speaks to who's able to drive vehicles and take them home?
Well, that would be fine, but everybody wears
could you supply us that?
I mean, I could probably give you everybody that drives a vehicle.
No, I'm on a policy. Do you have a policy?
If we need to drive the vehicle, we drive it, Mayor. It's that simple, okay? Everybody wears 2 or 3 hats. No, it's not one person assigned to so-and-so. He might be assigned that for right now. If I need him over here, that's where he's going, okay? Because I'll make sure we get the best bang for our buck.
Okay.
All right?
And those funerals and those things that you did, who actually pay for those funerals that you escort?
It comes out of my budget.
Comes out of you, the sheriff, or?
It's free to the citizens of Portsmouth. You live in Portsmouth, you pay taxes in Portsmouth, you're entitled to something free in the city of Portsmouth.
Free. Thank you, Sheriff. Good night.
Mr. Joe Wright.
Honorable Mayor Wright, Vice Mayor Simmons, council members, and all others assembled. My name is Joseph R. Wright, 1451 Welcome Road at the corner of Rotunda in Portsmouth, Virginia. Good evening. Councilman Whitaker, I had that on my list about that Confederate monument that's on the corner of High and Court Street. We tackled that almost 50 years ago. I think he was a little child then. Dr. Hollis spearheaded that at the time. Nothing became of it. But I think right now the time is right to do that. And I thank you for bringing it up. And I also thank the City Council for passing the ordinance tonight to exempt us 100% disabled veterans from paying the car tax or personal property tax. I even thank you two Air Force guys for doing that. As you all know, I was a paratrooper. I had to jump out of those ragged planes of y'all. Of course, it was before y'all's time. This was back in the 50s, where we used the C-119 planes. The Air Force called them flying boxcars. We call them flying coffins, you know. But anyway, I thank you for passing that tonight. Also on my list tonight is last council meeting, I talked about Rotunda. And lo and behold, the next morning, right after council meeting, that next day, it was so many workers out there trimming back those woods, Sherwood forest, trees, and all. Bernadette Hall called me the same day and asked me, was I satisfied? I told him, I said, no, it might need a little bit more trimming. She sent another crew out there the next day and trimmed those trees and things back, and I really thanked her for it. And I don't know whether you all know anything about the what's the name of that group that Bernadette was one of their favorite songs, the Four Tops. Yeah. You couldn't find that anywhere in Portsmouth after she did that because the people on Rotunda Avenue bought up all the old copies of Bernadette. Next on my list, I contacted VDOT just to make sure what was going on Rotunda. Because I noticed on the Chesapeake part, as soon as you cross that Chesapeake line, they don't have that problem. So I contacted VDOT, and they told me that on the Rotunda side of the interstate, or the exit, VDOT provide the localities with funds to cut those things back. That was the first time I heard that, so it shouldn't be a problem from now on. In fact, when they checked with me tonight, they asked me was I satisfied. I said, well, you might be able to do a little bit more because some of those limbs are still hanging across there. And since we got the money from VDOT to do it, you know, we just were going on and get it done. And I also like to thank Councilman Edwards too, because he was concerned. He stopped by my house and asked me was I satisfied, and I told him yes, I was. Next on my list. And I think that was it because Councilman Whitaker, let's do something about that monument. It's time for it now. I can even recall a few years ago, somebody came and blackfaced all of the statues that was on the monument. I think it was 4 of them. The city paid thousands of dollars to correct that problem. Well, I don't know whether the word is correct that problem or not, because in my opinion, there was thousands of dollars that was wasted. So let's get rid of that monument. I think the time is right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I do,
yes, sir.
Since I got 42 seconds, yes, I do believe in prayer. If it wasn't for prayer, I wouldn't be here today. I truly believe that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Vice Mayor.
Mr. Wright, I just want to tell you, I rode down Rotunda on Saturday on my way to a party in your neighborhood, and I looked at that road, and I thought, Joe Wright's crazy. This road, look, what's he talking about all this stuff? Yeah. I really did.
You came too late. They had already cleaned it up.
It was beautiful.
Came too late.
I did think about you, though. I rode right by your house.
Mr. Chair.
Hey, thank you, Mayor.
Nothing.
Oh, okay.
But you did spur some of your comments. I'm just looking at the post rally here, and it's captioned about protesters vandalized Charleston Confederate statue, and they paint the words "Black Lives Matter" on the statue, and it's all. So it just popped up as a news screen. So I just said to say, what are we going to do, and when are we going to look into doing it?
And I think first of all we need to get together and get our heads together and see what can we do and how we go about doing it.
Yeah.
I think we need to do that.
So we huddle with staff or something next week.
Yeah, I think we probably should. We need to discuss as a council to make sure we're all on one accord in the direction that we want before we get with staff.
Okay.
But I agree. We need to do it ASAP.
That's
yes,
on your list?
I'll spearhead it. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Whitaker?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, Mr. Mayor and Council, if we could, at our next meeting, have the interim city manager to give us some figures on the cost of removal or demolition, so that we can have that and we don't have to wait to consider that. Yeah, we can
cost that out.
So is that okay with council?
Well, you can, yeah, absolutely. But we need to first make sure we understand who it belongs to and all of those types of things. But yeah, get us a cost just so we'll have that number and we don't have to wait, Mr. Manager.
I'll try.
Okay. I think
Mr. Manager,
years ago paid for it.
Mr. Manager, you say you try. Is there some issue you see?
Well, we do have an extra week before the next meeting, so that gives us a little more time. But 3 weeks is a pretty short period of time to come up with an estimate to demolish.
Just a rough order. You don't, I mean, just a rough order magnitude.
I'll do my best.
Okay. All right. Very good. Okay, Madam Clerk.
Mr. William Devers.
Barbara made me write it out so I wouldn't get out of control here. Good evening, Mayor, City Council members, and staff members. I am William Devers of 4540 Hatton Point Road, Portsmouth, Virginia. I returned to this fair city on 12 May after spending the preceding week in Pennsylvania finding a hospice facility for my mother. She passed away last Tuesday. Imagine my surprise when I attended the People for Portsmouth meeting on the evening of 12 May, only to find that I had been publicly removed from the Planning Commission. I had been given no notice of this action. Not one of you had ever spoke to me about it. Never had been called before you to discuss any matters. After 3.5 years of service, did I not have the right to defend myself before my accusers? Is this Nazi Germany? You publicly embarrassed me with no reason given. I had several people at that meeting come up to me and want to know what did I do, most of them thinking it was criminally. If there was a reason, you never gave me the option to resign. I was informally told by a friend of one of the council members that it was because I ignored the advice given by the Assistant City Attorney on Planning Commission members engaging in political actions. There are only 2 actions that could have caused this, and both were months, I repeat, months before your action. The first action was a message I sent to Barry Randall after he attacked Councilman Moody. I never identified myself as a member of the Planning Commission. It was a private message and never posted by myself to his Facebook site. And never, once again, did I identify myself as a Planning Commission. He found this out by going to my Facebook site. Not only did he attack Councilman Moody with unfounded facts, but later he actually called for the mayor to disband the police department, asked the governor to declare martial law, and to send in the National Guard. All of you said through his attacks on the police department, and not one of you said a word. I repeat, not one of you called him to task for these outrageous statements. After retiring from the military, I taught high school. And I am proud to say I have several of my best students on the Portsmouth Police Department. If you will not defend their honor, I will. Now, before anyone calls me a racist, let me say that my pretty lady Barbara is a woman of color. Some of you know her. She's a retired principal from the Norfolk school system. My daughter Kathy is half Asian and a quarter Asian and a quarter Indian from the subcontinent of India. Mr. Mayor, that's why I was at the Taste of India, where I offered my hand and you brushed right by me. My grandson Brandon, the greatest teenager in the whole world, is half black. As you can see, if I was a racist, I would hate my whole family and myself. I would like to read you a message Mr. Randall sent me after he reviewed the pictures of my family on my Facebook account. Please excuse his grammar. The message is attached to your last page. From Barry R. Randall.
Mr. Deaver, I think you're going beyond the line here with making personal comments about an individual that cannot defend himself.
Yes, sir, he could defend himself, and, just like I could.
You're not going to do that here. Mm-hmm. You can do that somewhere else. Right. So if you want to complete your comments or summarize what you're saying, but we can't go down that road, sir.
My family was attacked, sir.
I understand.
He accused me of being a slave master. Okay. Dr. Whitaker, okay. Racism goes both ways. It goes both ways, Dr. Whitaker. There are white racists and there are black racists. And if you read this message, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Exactly what I'm talking about. Once again, he was allowed to attack Councilman Moody. He was allowed to attack Councilwoman Simmons. He was allowed to attack me, and I was never allowed to not only face my accuser, but to answer the accusations that were made against me. And most of all, he attacked the city police department, and no one came to their defense. The other action for which I might be held accountable was sending a notice that advertised a People for Portsmouth meeting. Once again, this was sent at least a month before the Assistant City Attorney advised the Planning Commission. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Good night.
Ms. Jean Shackelford.
Good evening, Mayor Wright, Vice Mayor Simmons, members of council, and Mr. Godfrey. I thank you for allowing me to speak to you tonight about a subject that is very dear to my heart for a lot of reasons, and I will not have time to give them all to you tonight. I am Jean Shackelford, and I live at 2437 Sterling Point Drive, and have been a resident of Portsmouth for 65 years. I have been active in education in the Portsmouth schools, retiring after a 35-year career as a teacher and administrator. I also have been active in a variety of cultural and civic endeavors and have spent countless hours in the arts with community organizations and in schools. I appear before you tonight to address Willett Hall and my views about its past, its present, and I hope its future. As a member of the Board of Directors of Portsmouth Community Concerts since the 1950s and twice its president, I have been able to be involved in the selection of performing single artists and groups of high acclaim. This organization has been recognized throughout the Hampton Roads area for the high quality of performances that it has presented for 7 decades. Willett Hall has been the home of this organization since it opened and has been recognized as a leading performance venue. That is, until recent years when deterioration has given way to a variety of problems that have caused some of the most outstanding performers to elect not to perform there. As an example, the nationally acclaimed St. Olaf Choir decided on the Ferguson Center in Newport News about a year ago because of a variety of issues encountered during a previous concert at Willett Hall. At one time, Portsmouth Community Concerts presented concerts that filled every seat in that house. It has been a while since that occurred, but that organization is still there, even with smaller audiences. The schools have used Willett Hall for many large as well as small programs and concerts through the years. District and state instrumental and choral events have been scheduled there many times because of the size of the stage and the variety of high values and value factors that Willett Hall provided for rehearsals and performances and for large audiences. For 10 years, Portsmouth Schools presented a gifted and talented musical theater program there that involved 250 students K through 12, all on the stage at the same time. The stage, the dressing rooms, the storage areas for scenery and props made Willett Hall an excellent venue for those performances, as well as for the musical and drama performances that were presented by Wilson High School through the years when they were next door. I met with the former two city managers and pled for something to be done for this fine facility. Yes, it is worth saving. Yes, it is going to cost money. But this city deserves a facility such as Willett Hall, not just for Portsmouth community concerts and educational purposes, but is needed for many types of events that has and can once again provide cultural and civic endeavors for its own citizens and those of its neighbors. It truly has become an economic development endeavor as well. I recommended to the former city manager that a group of city leaders contact the administration at Christopher Newport University, the site of the Ferguson Center, and discuss with them the architects, the contractors, the engineers, and others that were involved in making that facility one of the finest performing venues in the Hampton Roads community. It also was once a high school auditorium. Willett Hall, with the right kind of restoration, once again can be the crown jewel of performance venues for this entire area. It would make this city proud to have such a venue for every segment of the community. And I mean every segment. I hasten to add that there is one other asset that is a part of Willett Hall, and that is its 9-foot Steinway Grand. I worry about its condition. If I may just sum this up
Please.
In a couple of sentences, I can tell you that the need is critical. Much planning by highly professional, creditable people is needed before anything is done, and I hope that you will do that. You have written statements of some more comments.
Thank you very much. Let me just share, as you take your seat, I agree wholeheartedly with you, and it's going to be, we need to do a cost-benefit analysis on what it's going to take to be able to do that. As a city and as the folks responsible for city assets, we owe it to you, the citizens, to make sure we get that information and we provide that. It's just so unfortunate. We had an unsolicited proposal, and once again, just like these permits and all these other things people want to get, they run to the paper. We put all this misinformation out in the news about somebody, and we didn't want to give it up. None of that was true, and unfortunately,
I understand.
You understand?
I understand.
They're writing stories for a reason, but we like that asset, and we want to make sure we do what's right for that. And unfortunately, it may be something that we're not happy with, but it's our job, Ms. Shackelford, to do the work of the people, and all of those factors are on the table. And somehow that got twisted with some guy that wants to buy it for $1 and say he can fix it for $2 million. You know, we throw those numbers up, and none of that stuff is true. And we owe it to the citizens to make sure they get good information. And unfortunately, I'd like to control that newspaper, but I can't. But thank you for your comments.
You will note in my remarks that many of the wrong things were done in the previous restoration, and the people that were in charge did not want to listen to any of us who knew better.
Okay, and you've got that in your remarks. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Good night.
Mr. Ricardo Watts.
Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the committee, Good evening. Before I get started, I'd just like to clear up a bad rumor that I was supporting the recall. I just want to make note of that. I have an illustrious reporter from the Virginia Pilot last week had interviewed me, and she asked me my views about the recall. So I'm getting words from friends that I'm behind the recall for some odd reason. And I mentioned to her clearly that I'm not in favor of that. I'm running as mayor against you, as I mentioned. But I'm staying away from the recall. I don't agree with it at all, just to let you know. I do not think the recall is in order, but that doesn't mean that I agree with everything that's been going on with the city. I'm not raising taxes. I've been asking for more economic development in the city. Last week, after getting whipped in several hands of spades by a cousin-in-law, Emmett Smith of the Dallas Cowboys, I'm told by him that he may be interested in bringing back a project to purchase the Holiday Inn, to build high-rise condominiums, and create some other ways of bringing citizens to the city of Portsmouth. I've reached out to the Director of Indian Affairs, Angela Campbell, of the Department of Labor in D.C., as I'm part of the Meherrin Native Tribe, and I've been asking and requesting for sovereign rights, being part Native American, to consider a casino and a riverboat here in the riverfront. Under my leadership, I'm also putting in place a repeal for the tolls. I've requested with the Elizabeth River Corporation's meetings to see whether or not we can repeal those issues, particularly if you're traveling through the tolls, when you come back using that access twice. If I pay $2 or $1.25, when I come back using the tolls, those tolls should be reduced, particularly for our senior citizens, for all citizens, but particularly for college students who's traveling to Norfolk State University, to Hampton University, to Old Dominion, and the like. We need to take a page out of the late greats, Dr. Holly, the Mayor for Life, Marion Barry. Those individuals were economic development specialists. They created jobs. They had great working permits, providing lots of things for their cities, and we're lacking a lot of that. Most of our residents, they're fleeing to the D.C. metropolitan area for better living, better conditions. But we have to stop that and do something. And I think that the tolls are hurting us. And somehow we just got to fight that. And if necessary, under my leadership, we put up a lawsuit, fight Virginia Assembly, fight the state, because we're getting directly impacted by that. So those are my plans. Again, I've been advocating. Thank you, first of all, for the vote tonight. Thank you for that. I'm a veteran. 13 years as a Navy lieutenant. I think that I've been advocating some veteran benefits like our neighboring cities, but tonight you guys made that happen. I do take my hat off to you. I appreciate that. And the last issue that I'd like to speak about is our parks and recreations. I had mentioned that the Cavalier Manor Center, we just built those tennis courts, and I don't know if anybody had time to stop by there, but a brand new tennis facility should not have pebbles the size of your palm of your hands spread across new courts that we just completed. And I don't know if those officials are here today, but the playground is 50 feet away from the tennis courts, and you have grown adults, 45, 35, 50 years old, drinking, sitting on a playground that's made for 8-year-olds. So I know our civic president, Joe Wright, is in the audience. He can attest to this fact. Other people may be here who live in Cavalier Manor who can attest to this fact. But those issues got to be stopped. And somehow, if we can have a police situated somewhere around there, it's just uncalled for. So people are not utilizing those courts even as we speak. All right, thank you for the time.
Thank you. Let me just clarify that. Were you misquoted in the paper about a recall?
No, some friends of mine the part of the DNC had contacted me saying that they've been hearing that they thought that I was a part of the recall, and I told them unequivocally, no, I'm not. I had an interview with the Virginia Pilot reporter, and I had mentioned to her that I was not a part of it. I don't agree with it.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Good night. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Clyde Toller.
Good evening, Mayor Wright,
Sergeant
Vice Mayor, Mr. Moody, all council members, city manager, and we got a fabulous lawyer sitting over there today. Good side now, Ms. White and staff. Clyde Toller, Parkview. I want to say first, congratulations to Mr. Steve Hurd. He jumped up and ran out of here, but he won a nice election. It was good. So now we got somebody new. Kicked out the old and got in something new. Anyway, I want to say this. The invocation was given by Pastor Gaynor. That's how you pronounce it. All right, he left here. God was here, he left here. After he left here, God left too, and left Satan in here. Satan stays, Satan here. And it's a shame, but it happened. I want to thank Ms. Bernadette and the city inspector for coming out, doing their job. She rode around in the heat in that truck, but she got out. Instead of riding around too hot to get out or too cold to get out, they got out. She came to my house. I let her see what was happening. And they took care of business, her and the inspector. And to the sheriff, Watson, and to Captain Cherry, and the police chief. And I see Tony Goodman sitting over there from Parkview. As being the past president of Parkview, hey, after 15 years, Mr. Goodman, that house is gone. Thanks to the police chief. And finally we got peace in Parkview again. It took 15 years for to do it, but it's happened. And Ms. Bernadette came out there and slapped a sign on there, condemn. Now I say this, we got another place condemned. And I say this, tear that Wheeler Hall down. If that was my house in that bad condition, you get a crane and come up there and tear it down. Look, demolish that thing. And another thing, that golf course. You got that golf course out there, I'm paying tax on it. How come I can't go out there and play a free hole of 9-hole golf? I'm paying for it. It should be free to me. You're paying all that tax, keeping it up. Let's get rid of some of this bad baggage we got, and we have a lot of money if you get rid of this bad baggage that we got. But somehow we're not doing that. We're doing a lot of things that's not right. And as my comrade right over there said, he's still praying. Yeah, prayer do change things. Prayer helps. But sometimes I think God needs a little help. I could give him a little help with something. I think my mother always told me, she said, wait on the Lord. I think sometime I could give him a little help, take things in hand a little bit. Oh, for the city manager, you're going out looking for a city manager. We got a city manager sitting right up here right now. Why we got to go out and get somebody? I know when he took that job, he was hoping one day if something happened to the city manager, he would step up to be that next man in the shoes. I know when I was Sergeant Major, when somebody below left or got out of place or died, I put somebody who was next to the car. I didn't go there and look for some sergeant somewhere else to put him in. I took that corporal and made him sergeant, and he took that job. If he good enough to be the internal city manager, he should be good enough to be the city manager. Stop wasting my money going out looking for people and then bring them in here and then y'all get rid of them. This is awful what you do. Now, since January, y'all have really been bad. So look, let's get together and stop all this mess that we doing around here. No, I've been silent, didn't come up here, but look, you're getting on my nerve now. And you're getting on the citizen nerve, because they telling me all up and down the street. Stop it. This racist mess, take it somewhere else. Take it out of here. I've seen enough of it and live. All of you up there, none of you as old as I am. In fact, I know when half of you was born. Hey, look, let's stop this mess. And you, Miss Simmons, you know, I know you was a little girl when you would cross street church with me, you and your father. Mayor Wright, I know when you was born, too. I know about the both of you. But anyway, let's get along. Point of order means stop it. And when somebody call a point of order, Mayor, you got to take that and you got to stop whoever running the mouth and doing wrong. You got to stop it. So let's step up to it and let's do what's right.
Good night. Thank you, Sergeant Major.
Mr. Barry Randall.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I guess I'll just stick to my paper. I'm kind of thrown back from the stuff that's been said tonight. But nevertheless, I want to echo some things that has already been said. But tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. at Mount Sinai Church, 900 Portsmouth Boulevard, they're having a clinic for restoration of rights for ex-felons. So be good for people to get out there. I stand here tonight before you to address the divisiveness in the city, be it race or whatever. It's evident that we're not all on the same page. Today, our governor has set in motion a plan to remove the Confederate flag from the license plates here in the Commonwealth. He cited the ruling from the U.S. Supreme Court to remove any emblems of the Confederacy from the states. With that said, I think a conversation needs to be held, and thank God that you all already started that conversation tonight in reference to removing the Confederate monument downtown. And yes, it does house a Confederate flag amongst other artifacts. However, it doesn't mention anything about the 30,000 black lives that I believe are fought alongside of them. Also want to address some things about the new interim chief of police. I think it would be a great start if the city council and the interim city manager would help form a committee to work from the citizens in the city to work with this police chief to make sure that the police are not abusing their badges, nor the black citizens of Portsmouth. And the reason I say that is because we know that we had 2 individuals in this city killed by police. And I want to make sure I use the proper terminology. Mr. William Chapman and Walter Brown III. And it's interesting because a lot of people around the world is uptight about the gentleman who killed the 9 lives in Charleston, how they found out that he was able to go to Burger King before, I guess, they took him to the police station. But one of the things that we need to be mindful of, that we have 2 officers who not only get to go to Burger King, they go to Captain George's, they go to Wendy's, they can go wherever they want to go, because we have not officially known who it is that have killed these 2 individuals. However, if it was the other way around, these individuals' names will be placed on the TV screen and all over milk cartons because they killed police officers. Want to not beat a dead horse, but it's still relevant. The reason I think this committee is so important to make sure that it's transparency being taking place in the city is because we look to leadership. And again, we know that our vice mayor chose to say in open council, after being asked by myself, does Black Lives Matter, that she supports the police. I wonder if after knowing that the police department that she supports killed those 2 individuals, do she still stand by those comments that she made? Phone number I want to give out, 757-673-2914. Again, 757-673-2914. You can leave a voicemail message. I gave the group my word that I wouldn't go public with this until we know that we had gathered at least 2,000 signatures in the recall of Vice Mayor Elizabeth Simmons. That's the phone number you can call if you would like to sign the recall or if you would like a recall packet, because we have to hold her accountable, because it wasn't until after she made those comments that the police did those horrible acts. Whether they was justified or not, we do know that one of those individuals didn't have a weapon, and it appears that he also didn't have anything that belonged to Walmart on him when they found him dead in Walmart parking lot. Thank you.
Mr. Wilbert Allen.
To our mayor and vice mayor, councilors, and citizens. It's really a privilege to share this evening. But thing I want to share on is I sort of want to pick up on the last thing I was sharing, because we as citizens and you as delegates and leaders have our responsibilities to pass into us. But sometimes we tend to believe that we vote you in and you just dictate to us everything. But it's not so. We have a role to play also as a citizen. And this is one of the things that, sometimes we find a lot of problems, but there's no solutions. And no matter how you take it, you will always have problems. But sometimes when you want the solution, you cannot find anybody to help you with the solution. A lot of people will become upset. But some of you guys, dignitaries or leaders there, you sit on a lot of boards. You have a lot of knowledge. But sometimes, you display yourself. Because one thing is this: a leader show the way and go the way. And upon the grounds of choosing every one of you there that sit before me, is that because we realize that you have a certain abilities that would help us to fulfill the vision of the city. But at the same time, all of us that are here this evening, and those that are listening and those that are watching, we have also a responsibility to play, And so I just want to share with you about the AIM. And it means that the announcement, the information, and the motivation. And first, I would say, I thank you for all the improvement that you have been doing in the city, like the roads, High Street, the road to the college that travel almost every day, and the apartments, the new apartments like on London, a lot of people critique it and say, well, you're building more apartment, who will live there? But now there's no room there, okay? But you guys are doing a great lot. On the other hand, the community center, it started, the swimming started, the pool open. We commend you. You're working at something, but a lot of us, we only try to identify the problems, and there's no solution. But, and I raise my hat to Dr. Gill, the great work she have been doing to keep this going, and a lot of us. But when I look around, I realize that, when I look on the whole thing of the city, the demographic is that you have more whole of people, and they're here trying to fight to hold their little property or values, while the other generation, we have a responsibility for the other generation, and if we don't set the path for now, then we'll miss it later on. When you look on the wall, it's over 25 persons sitting in your chair or more. When we look in the president's chair, it's over 55 persons sitting in the chair. But we know it's a 54 president. Everybody play their part. We are living in a new age, and we have to understand that we cannot play the part of 10 years ago. We have to play it now. So a leader know the way, and they find ways how to implement things, or come up with plans to help us to be better community and better people. I remember a couple years ago at age 23 or 2, I bought a house, my first home, and there was a lot of crime in that era. And somebody looked at me and said, man, you bought a house there? And I told them, people change community. And I want to say this again. People change community. That's right. We're concerned about our cousins, our relatives and friends, but people change community. And this is what? Stand your ground and continue to lead with dignity, with pride, and with everything that is in you. God bless you.
Thank you, sir. Good night.
Mr. Robert Falk.
Good night, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Robert Falk. I'm here to ask the City Council to look into this relationship between Portsmouth Redevelopment and Housing Authorities and the Portsmouth Police Department. I believe they have a list that they keep, and the list has a lot of African American men names on it. And whenever we go to PRHA property, even our parents stay out there, a girlfriend might stay out there, the children, if we're not on the lease, we receive a trespassing charge. This list has been in effect since the 90s. I remember I got one back in 93. Once you get a warning for being in PRHA, well, we all know 90% of the people that live in PRHA are African Americans. But when the women, only women and children, when the black man go out there, y'all back, you get a trespassing, your life is destroyed, you recidivize back and forth inside the system. And I'm asking you guys to just look into it. Also, Portsmouth Redevelopment Housing Authority has hired this company, I believe, called Wet Towing Company. And the poorest people in the city are in Redevelopment Housing Authority. But Wet just take way too many vehicles. And it's $140 to get it back. I know a gentleman who parked in the handicap spot. He live in Portsmouth Redevelopment and Housing Authority. He forgot to put his handicap placard in his window. $140 mistake. And it's just not fair to the poorest people in the city. Also, the city of, majority of the black people that live in Portsmouth, black men and some women, have felonies. And these felonies keep people from voting. And once you get a felony, we just dead to who sets up here. And too many of us have them. And we never vote in local, state, or federal elections. And that ought to be looked into. And lastly, I apologize because this may be inflammatory, incendiary, but I'm making an accusation that I can't prove, but I ask that the council look into it. We kind of believe, I submitted a petition to the Sergeant at Arms, and it's listed in there, but we kind of believe that it's been hundreds of thousands of Caucasian policemen, Caucasian men that has infiltrated the police departments across America. And not only the police departments, but the prosecutor office. And since prosecutors become judges, we got a lot of racist white men that's infiltrated these departments. And it seems like because of the brotherhood that the police has, that no one tells that, hey, we believe this guy is racist. So I'm asking the city council to look into these things, look into these accusations. And if you don't find none, I apologize and I'll withdraw my statements. But please look into it because we're paying a heavy price out here as black men. I mean, once we get approached by police, the situation is hardly ever de-escalated. As soon as we get approached, it's an ID check. Most of us look like someone that has an outstanding warrant. As soon as we get approached, can I search you? As soon as we get approached, well, what you doing out here, mainly in PRHA? Because that's where most people frequent, where the majority of their people live at. And so the police is allowed to continue to do these things to us. And as the city council, I just ask you to look into these situations and try to help the black man, help the African-American man in your city, and just give us a hand up. Most of us back in prison 90 days, 200 days, and these judges don't have no compassion for us. It's no need to even talk when you're arrested. You know, you're just done simply because I believe you're dark-skinned. So, thank you for your time. My name is Robert Falk. I'm a longtime resident in the city of Portsmouth. I have a very long record, but my application sits on the governor's desk waiting for approval for reinstatement of rights. It's been there approximately 4 years now. And what? No results. So I lay this in you guys' lap. I thank you for your time, and thank you for allowing me an audience.
Okay, good night, sir.
Our final speaker is Mr. Corey Griffin.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Dr. Edmond. Good evening, Dr. Whitaker. Good evening, Ms. Simmons. Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Mr. Moody. Good evening, Mr. Cherry. I only really had one thing on my agenda, and I think I'll be working that out with the Osmonds, Ms. Bernadette. So I really don't want to speak on that. It's interesting that so many of the non-speakers spoke on the statue here on Court Street. And for years, I would see that statue. I'm also a veteran myself, and I've served my country on a government level, federal level, state, even on a local level. I've served. And I would see the statue, and I would always wonder, where was the Union guy? I would always see the Confederate guy. Where was the Union? I would say, these guys lost the war. Why is that statue there? And I asked someone, one time somebody asked me, they said, you know, are you that naive? And I was. Because where I grew up at it's not black and white. It's ethnicity, the Cubanos, the Czechs, the Polish, the Italians, the Greeks, that kind of thing. It's not black and white. And I was naive to that, truly was. Lately, I've been thinking in terms of what's been going on in our country, and more specifically, in our city. I have Caucasian friends. I have African-American friends. I serve 600-700 families every week, feeding them from all different diversities. And all I hear is from Caucasian population in relationship to this city council is these guys are racist or these guys are racist. And I don't get that. I don't get that at all. We're all human race. And there's only one race in this entire room. It's human race. And we need to start acting that way. I love this city. I've been coming here since 1969. My parents were born here. My grandparents were born here. Bernard D. Griffin is a cousin of mine. The great Holly, I just noticed his picture there. Man, Holly was a great man. He used to counsel me when it came time to election. I missed that man. He was a great man. And what I want to say is we need to get our city together because people are leaving the city, and we're not going to have no city. I mean, all I hear is this, that, and this, but I don't hear nothing collectively getting things done for the people of the city. The people in the city are hemorrhaging, and that's why they're leaving. They're leaving, they're hemorrhaging. I bought my house here when I retired, right after 9/11. I was 4 blocks away from the World Trade Center. And I was dispatched from the duty I was on to go to the World Trade Center. So that stuff is really personal to me. And it seems like every time we have a tragedy in this country, a month or two, we're collective. It's like a news cycle, 24, 40 hours, we on to something else. We just had the tragedy last week. And I used to tell B.T. Knight at Mount Carmel this years ago, I said something like this was gonna happen. I used to tell him about this years ago. You'd be security conscious, because he used to tell me, you gotta leave your weapon in the car. And I would say to him, if something happened like this in the church, how am I gonna put that man down? But that's another story. I'd like to speak to everyone that's a council member outside of this room. I'd like to set up a meeting and talk with you guys individually, particularly you, the Honorable Mayor, because anything I can do for this city, I would gladly do. I got 23 seconds left. About 4 years ago, they had $500 million lottery. I think you guys remember. I'm at Victory Cross in Wawa, and the news was there about 2 o'clock in the morning, getting a sandwich, gas, going home. And they said, what would you do? I said I would probably donate a few $1 million to the city. That's how I felt then. Today, I don't know if I would feel that way. God bless, and let's do the right thing, particularly with that statue.
Good night. Thank you, sir. Is that it? Okay. Good night. We're adjourned.